Good morning, everyone. I'm glad you could join us on this beautiful Friday. It looks like we're going to have a really nice weekend, so I hope everybody has an opportunity to enjoy that. My name is Bridget Stacy, and I am the Interim State Coordinator for the Homeless Education Program. Some topics that we're going to be discussing today, primarily with the focus on data collection and entry for homeless children and youth, and we'll give you a second to look over those. Okay, we've got some links here. And when we're talking about our audience, we're specifically talking about the district homeless liaisons and those staff that are responsible for data entry. And we also have some great links for you below. The first one plays a very important role in ensuring that your data is accurate and homeless students are receiving the support and services that they need. The most critical is the 2021-2022 data standard. And this link tells you exactly how to enter your data and what is required for federal reporting. The next link is the Education for Homeless and Children and Youth, and that takes you to KDE's website. There's tons of resources there. There's key national organizations that have resources for you, guidance from the U.S. Department of Education, and also eligibility determination resources. The homeless children data collection and reporting link. There's additional resources for data collection and entry in Infinite Campus, along with the homeless student count by district and grade, and statewide homeless student count each for 2018, 19, 20, and 21. The other links can also be found on our webpage, and they have some resources as well to help with identification, allowable spending guidelines, and other resources. I apologize if there's any noise coming in behind me. My lawn guy is mowing. So now we're going to discuss the definition and identification of homeless students. And the majority of you know this information, but for any new liaison, it's very important and it's always good to have a refresher. So children and youth who lack fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. I won't read all of this to you, but there's some examples sharing housing, economic hardships, trailer parks, living in motels, emergency shelters, and then also children and youth who have a primary nighttime residence that is in a public place and not designed as a regular sleeping accommodation. And when we talk about this, we're thinking about living in cars, abandoned buildings, parks, and campgrounds, and then also migratory children who qualify as homeless because they're primary nighttime residents. So, Marjorie, you can leave that up just for a second and that's okay. Okay. I'll let everybody look through that. I went through it kind of fast. And next up, Marjorie is going to walk us through the data entry.
Good morning. My name is Marjorie Conley. I work with the Office of Continuous Improvement. I work with most of the data in the office. So I'm going to cover the data side and the Infinite Campus side for homeless. I'm going to start with the homeless data entry. The path to enter the data is student information, program participation, and homeless. When creating a homeless record, if the student is eligible for homeless services at any point during the school year, a homeless record must be created in the student's record within student information, program participation, and homeless. To finalize the entry, you must document the primary nighttime residence and unaccompanied homeless youth designation. The homeless services and record must remain active throughout the remainder of the school year, regardless of whether the student's status changes or not. So once a student is designated as homeless, they will remain homeless for the remainder of the school year. For primary nighttime residence entry, select the residence of the student at the time he or she was determined eligible. These are examples of what you would select: shelters and transitional housing, doubled up, unsheltered, or motels and hotels. For unaccompanied youth, we sometimes get questions concerning guardianship and homelessness. For example, what if a child is living with grandparents without the grandparents having guardianship? So you could ask yourself, what is the family choice? For example, the family takes a job, leaves the student with grandma to finish their year. This is not a homeless situation because it is an arrangement made due to the student being able to finish their school year. Homelessness is based on the 3 factors in Mckinney-Vento Act definition of homelessness. Those were on the slides that we shared a few slides back. Each case must be analyzed to determine whether the student situation is a result of financial hardship or an emergency or disaster, or was it a choice that was not made while the family was in distress. The unaccompanied youth status may be particularly relevant for migrant youth who come to the United States alone in search of work, or who through a variety of circumstances no longer lives with their parents. These youth may find themselves homeless and unaccompanied due to economic hardship and separation from their parents or guardians. The student summary report is available by going to student information, program participation, homelessness. This report generates a list of homeless records for a specific student. Homeless data transfers, very important aspect of homeless data. If a student is designated as homeless in one district, then they will be for the remainder of the school year. So homeless data transfers as a summary through the student record transfer process. The data will be in a PDF file, which means the receiving district will need to create new homeless record in their district database for the student. The data elements on the PDF should be entered into the receiving district's database as shown on the transfer document. The start date should be updated to reflect the date in which the student enrolled in the receiving district, and the end date will auto-populate to 6/30 of the reporting year. This should remain the same. The end date should always be 6/30 because once a student is designated as homeless, they will be homeless for the remainder of the school year. Subsequent enrollments. Once a student is identified as homeless, the student's homeless record, including primary nighttime residence and unaccompanied youth status, should remain selected in the student's record for the remainder of the academic year, regardless of whether his or her status changes. This includes students placed in a facility or group home after the identification of homeless is in the current academic year. We have created some state-published ad hoc filters. These state-published ad hoc reports are available to assist with identification of homeless students transferring from another district or who were homeless in a previous year and may need to be evaluated for homelessness in the current year. Appropriate staff must be granted access to these reports by the district. The ad hocs that we have are homeless record missing for transfer and homeless record prior year, but not selected year. We have the QA homeless report, which is also a tool that will really help with data validation. The purpose of the detail report. This report comes in a detailed version and an aggregate version. The detailed version is to provide a list of homeless students to be used for state and federal reporting purposes. The detailed report also provides the user with highlighted elements that indicate data quality issues. The report should be generated on a regular basis throughout the school year to identify homeless students enrolled in the district and identify data quality issues that need to be addressed. Appropriate user access must be granted to staff who need to generate this report. And again, that is at the district level. The QA homeless report aggregate version, like I said, it comes in a detailed or an aggregate version. The aggregate version will generate in a PDF it contains unduplicated counts of students identified as homeless anytime during the reported year. This report also calculates a percentage of homeless students by gender, race, ethnicity, by grade, living status, unaccompanied youth status. Please share the aggregate report with district and school leadership for both awareness and quality assurance. This is also a good report to, the aggregate is a good report to share because it doesn't have any personally identified information of students. The QA homeless report card option. This report can be used in assisting with the verification of the district and school's homeless student group counts during the school report card review process. The report will generate counts of homeless students who have a primary enrollment in schools included in the school report card reporting. This table provides a count of homeless students by race, gender, and other groups. And this report is also located under the QA homeless report. For data validation, please make sure to validate homeless records to ensure accuracy for the school report card and for other federal and state reporting. The district homeless liaison or coordinator should ensure the correct students are reported, including withdrawn students. If homelessness indicators were imported from a prior year enrollment, the homeless liaison should review the homeless status in the current year and update the program participation indicators as needed. I'm going to go back and just emphasize here also, this should be done quarterly, just to ensure that our data is as accurate as possible. Free lunch validation. Filter the QA detailed report on the free reduced lunch column to ensure that all homeless students are receiving free meals. The report highlights the field as an error if the status is marked reduced or paid. Please collaborate with your food service coordinators to ensure the student FRAM record in Infinite Campus is updated and the student is receiving free lunch for the remainder of the academic year. The free lunch validation for homeless students. Please make sure to validate homeless records to ensure that all homeless students are enrolled in free lunch. And you can see on the slide, highlighted in yellow, it'll appear the same way on the report. If there is an error or anything that needs to be resolved, any issues, they will be highlighted in yellow, which makes it a little easier to locate. The reporting timeline and data uses. Homeless data should be complete and accurate by June 30th each year because KDE extracts homeless data on July 1st from the district data warehouse. Our contact information, you'll see Bridget Stacy is a branch manager, and she's also the interim coordinator for the homeless program. And then my name is Marjorie Conley. I am available to answer any questions you have about the data entry or the Infinite Campus side of the homeless data. Thank you so much.
So I think it's, we do have some questions for you, Marjorie. I think one of the things that you all always point out, and I'll just say it out loud again, because I think you mentioned it earlier, if they're homeless at any time of the year, they're homeless for the rest of the year.
Until June 30th of each year.
So you do not want to turn that off. You don't want to change their homeless indicator because the factors changed if they were homeless at some point during the year until the following year.
Correct.
So we have some questions, and the one that's hit the top first is living in a trailer park is considered homeless, ?
No. Only if they do not have fixed and adequate housing. Living in a trailer park would not be classified as homelessness.
Right.
And I've also entered some information that only, for example, if the trailer is inadequate, there's no running water, no plumbing, there's overcrowding, or if the trailer is temporary or they are doubled up and living with other people out of necessity.
Some of the tornado areas could fall under that, you know, they're temporary trailers, things like that. Wouldn't that be the case? Because we have a lot of that coming, you know, still in Western Kentucky.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So if you're, in the app.gosoapbox.com and you want to see some of that additional information, just click on the question. And if you see that there's a number beside to the right of the question, that means somebody's already put a comment in there, and you can read that information that has been added. The next one is the end date of 6:30 does not auto-populate for me when I am entering a new entry. Is this something I need to submit an infinite campus ticket for?
I would say definitely reach out to us, and I'll research it and see what I can figure out.
So Cindy,
I went and tested that when I saw it. This is Lisa from the KSIS team. It doesn't immediately populate. It's after you put the start date in. So it looks at the year you're using in the start date and then matches the end date. So when you first bring the screen up, it'll look blank. But once you put a start date in, the end date will populate.
thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
So is a student considered homeless if the parent is hospitalized in a coma and the student is forced to move to a different district with grandparents? Other parent does not have custodial rights.
Bridget, I'm going to refer to you for this one.
Sorry, I have my mic off. Yes, they would be.
So if a student is doubled up, but then moves to a hotel, can I end date the first and add the second as long as I end date the second on June 30th?
Yes.
Okay. So you would have 2 homeless records for the year because they had 2.
This is Wendy. Sorry, I answered that one in there already. So per our federal reporting requirements, we have to report the initial identification or their living status when they're initially identified within the academic year. So if their status changes within the same academic year, you do not have to put in a new record.
Oh, okay.
You would only put that new record in if you reevaluate them the next school year and they're still in a hotel, you can put in the hotel. But we report per year, so you do not have to change that.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate that. All right, if there are any other questions, please submit those to Go Soapbox. We have about 10 more minutes for this to cover homelessness. And Marjorie or Bridget, if there's anything else, Wendy, you'd like to add or reemphasize, please take this time to do that. And we do have a question that came in. It says an RV would be considered temporarily, correct?
Yes.
Question. Yeah, okay.
I also put in the I also put into one of the questions about determining the eligibility for homelessness. There is within our homeless data standards a really good flow chart for helping to determine eligibility determinations. A lot of this is very, very much individualized. So I would suggest going to our homeless data standards and using that flow chart. It kind of walks you through some of the questions to ask to determine if the identification or the living status is actually meets the definition of the Mckinney-Vento homeless. So it's all really based on economic hardship or fixed, regular, and adequate housing. So it may not necessarily be that the trailer that the student's living in meets that same definition. So you really need to look at it as an individual basis. And this flow chart really helps to make that determination. So again, all of those resources are linked within your homeless data standards. I would make sure and share those out to any staff in the schools or districts that are responsible for the data collection and reporting and identification of homeless students.
Thank you, Wendy.
I think that's always a clarification that, any question that comes up around homeless living, it depends.
Yes.
It was, mentioned earlier about the different factors, but thanks for bringing up that data standard and the information in that, Wendy. We do have another question. Should all homeless students be marked free? ? What about making them full price?
I'm sorry.
I guess they're talking about lunch.
Yes. So lunch status for homeless students should be free. They automatically receive free lunch. And we sent an email out in collaboration probably a month or so ago about the connection to your point of sale service. So not only do you want to make sure, of course, for reporting purposes, that the student's FRAM eligibility record in Infinite Campus is marked as free, but you'll also want to make sure that that student is actually receiving free services by that indication being made in your district or your school's point of sale services. So the report that Marjorie went over, the QA homeless report, if you run the detail version of that report, then that it will highlight that column for economically disadvantaged in yellow, and you can filter on that. So if the student has reduced or paid lunch, then that column is going to be highlighted, and you can literally then go into the student records and make that update. But then again, also make sure that your point of sale system has that, because there's not a connection between that report and the point of sale. The connection is literally between the Infinite Campus FRAM eligibility. So long answer is yes, they have to be on free lunch.
So good information. Thank you. It's about serving the students and making sure that the point of sale system is the most important system, but we want the correct information in Infinite Campus so that we can report those correctly.
Yeah, and so I want to kind of go back if we can. I'm sorry I didn't turn my camera on, but I want to kind of go back to the one about the student whose parents were hospitalized and they had to go live with the grandparent. This is the one that would determine if the student met the definition of unaccompanied youth. So I would advise also, there's a really good resource within the homeless data standards that's called Supporting the Education of Unaccompanied Students Experiencing Homeless. This is within the homeless data standard under unaccompanied youth, but it will give you really good details on determining if the student meets the definition of unaccompanied youth based on the fact that they're not in the custody of their parent. So again, that would be individualized too, and that this resource that I'm talking about will really help with that.
And we hope everybody today is aware of our data standards, but we know there's a lot of new folks out there. So just in case, if you go to KDE's website at education.ky.gov, and just in the search bar, if you type in KSIS, which is Kentucky Student Information System acronym, and data standards, it'll be the first thing that comes up, or it is for most of us, so you never know. But you'll get that, and you'll see the full list. And as you go through all of these trainings today, that is a page we encourage you to bookmark, because it's got a lot of information. I tell you, I use it. Every time a question comes in and says, well, what are we supposed to do? I have to go back and look at it myself just to see what the standard is. And he's like, well, why do we have all these standards? Well, these standards are there because if we're putting the data in the same way, we're able to pull the data on your behalf. And when Marjorie and Bridget and Wendy talk about the importance of verifying the quality of data, we want you to do that before the end of our reporting period, because we're just pulling that data. We've got an advantage in Kentucky is having a statewide student information system that we can do that on your behalf. Otherwise, somebody in your district would be having to prepare all these data files to send to the state so that we could actually fulfill the federal reporting requirements. And money is distributed from the federal government for a lot of these programs, and there's expectation that they're getting the information they need to show the number of students that are benefiting from this. So it is really important, and honestly, some of these reportings can have impact on the money you receive for your local district. So it's just important to have that together.
Yeah, and the homeless data standards is kind of a short document, but it has a lot of links to some federal resources, flow charts for, like I said, for homeless identification, for unaccompanied youth identification, and additional resources that would really help. So I do strongly advise sharing the electronic version of that with the staff in your district. I think Marjorie covered it, but we'll just make sure that the transfer of student records for homeless, that's another thing that we kind of run into some issues with. That data transfers as a summary PDF and has to be re-entered. So if a student transfers from Woodford County to Anderson County and was homeless in Woodford County, that they are still to receive homeless services in the new district, regardless of if their status changed. So you would want to, once the student transfers, go to that homeless transfer summary report and key in the information or create a new homeless record in your district with the same indications and put the start date as of the date the student received services starting in your district. So you may have covered that, Marjorie. If you did, I'm sorry, but we do have issues with that a lot, that the students stop receiving services when they transfer to another district, and they should receive services for the entire academic school year.
Thank you, Wendy. And I'm going to encourage folks throughout the training today, if you're hearing something, you're thinking, maybe you're not doing this yourself, and you think, I hope we're doing this right. These trainings today are recorded. So you'll be able to go and pull those no later than tomorrow off the KDE Media portal and be able to send folks and say, hey, watch this training, because, and just to make sure that we're doing all this correctly, it takes 20 minutes to watch the training for homeless. And if you can get that out to the right people and they just didn't have time to participate today, please help us with that, because we really want this information out. We want references to data standards. If you go that little extra effort, include the data standards link to the information you heard on homeless, and you're sending that out to other folks.
Yes. Homeless reporting, I think, that we pull that data at KDE. You have the QA homeless report to verify your data, but those counts are, like Dee Dee said, are very important to federal funding allocations and for public reporting on the school report card. And of course, like I said, we report it to the federal government annually as well. So we ask that by June 30th, all your homeless data has been entered into the system and has been verified. The first week of July, we pull that data and we use it for, like I said, public reporting on school report card and all of our federal reporting and any allocation data. So it's very important to make sure your data is accurate by June 30th.